thanks everybody for taking the time to join and hear the presentation. Really, it's development program surety and efficiencies, and there's lots of things that actually sort of contribute to a successful program delivery. I'm going to focus on a couple of things. One being sort of technology, as you would probably expect from a plant company or a large part of the business through plant, through new technologies and an innovation that we're bringing to the market. And the other one is people and behaviour, and generally that's through collaboration. Now, what I'm probably going to sort of say here isn't earth-shattering, and probably a lot of people sort of have heard it all before. And you probably have, and like me and some of my colleagues that sits on the call, probably heard it over the many decades. The big problem we do have is the application of how you collaborate and how you work together to bring a successful sort of project. So I'm going to really, because of the application of that type of behaviour. It's not, I'm saying it's successful, but sometimes it isn't, and there's this big clamber to go direct to cheapest, and that isn't always the case, and hopefully through the presentation we'll get a chance to see why it's not always the default position is just to go to cheap and to get the delivery. But before I do that, I do realise that probably Readypower is not readily known in Scotland. It's much sort of bigger in operation south of the border, but it is something that we're trying to do to sort of move and mobilise it to Scotland. So I'll take just a couple of minutes just to give a brief overview of the business and the setup of the business. Essentially the group organisational structure is Readypower Group, and how it devolves its legal obligations is two separate legal entity companies. One being sort of the Readypower Terrawise, who are the contracting arm, and provide engineering services and core activities being ancillary civils, piling and the likes, and the specialist operated plant RRBs. So my job in Scotland is to actually sort of pull both of these companies and harness the power and the services that we can bring to the rail industry. We're throughout the UK. We've got 5 hubs, and we've done that sort of deliberately to align ourselves to the Network Rail sort of routes. So we're kind of operating the southern, the central, Scotland, Wales, western. 5 major depots and 2 main satellites at Bracknell and Rochester. As I say, a majority of the work at the minute is in the south, but we have moved into Scotland and have mobilised, and now for just over a year have the Blantyre depot, which is predominantly for the plant, and doing pretty well as it stands. What do we offer? The services, specialist operated assets. We're an asset-led company, and we've currently got the sort of biggest road rail fleet and modern fleet in the UK, and it services not just track renewals, but civils, overhead lines sort of capabilities. We've got machines that service all of that. Well, we've now got sort of the biggest sort of plant operator scheme running, and whatever you think the plant operating scheme, the POS system that came in a number of years ago, it's still there, and we still run it pretty well. And quite sizable. Specialist infrastructure engineering, which is devolved through Readypower Terrawise, and the core business, as I said, is piling, structures, permanent way. We've successfully moved into permanent way, and are supporting some of the works delivery units down in the south, and ancillary civils. And as I said, we've got the national 5 sort of major operational hubs at Reading, Nottingham, Warrington, Cardiff and Glasgow. Just a quick look at the fleet, and as I said, it covers all aspects. We don't just specialise in track renewals. We've got again the biggest piling attachments in the UK, and a lot of our work is done supporting and has been supporting a lot of the electrification projects. big investment. The company do invest and they put their money where their mouth is to bring new equipment to the market. As you can sort of see, I've just put in there a rough sort of expenditure over the kind of last 3 years, and you can sort of see year on year there is sizable sort of expenditure in bringing new kit to the market. Again, the specialist contracting capability, it covers all the structure erection, retaining walls, drainage, right through to sort of bridge protection, embankment stabilisation. So we are doing a lot of that type of work in some of the major projects south of the border. So that's a whistle-stop tour of Readypower, and who we are, what we're trying to achieve. But the paper I put together tonight was spun on with what we're trying to do at Readypower, how we're trying to make a difference, how we're trying to sort of ensure that programmes get delivered. I've put in here some statements. I don't know if many were on the Network Rail Supplier Conference last week, where some of these statements that come out from Andrew Haynes, the Treasury T-Rail is expensive and not value for money, Network Rail over-specify and over-engineer. And that has, and I apologise if there's any designers on the call, but a lot of the time it has been the case over the years. He recognises it, and through sort of collaboration, which was a main theme from this conference, we need to work a way forward and not just default to over-engineering and over-specifying. So he's taking a commitment to try and move that, and he wants to get an investment. He wants to invest in innovation to drive the cost down. Mentioned decarbonisation, it's happening, and quite enlightening that Network Rail and principal contractors are committing to a pipeline visibility charter, so that it gives a lot of the tier 2s and the SMEs a better visibility of what's actually there for them. And Alec Times again confirmed decarbonisation is law, and it will happen. Whether people, because there's lots of questions on whether it's affordable. He believes it's now beyond affordable question. It needs to happen. And generally from the route MDs from the various routes throughout the UK, the theme was always around innovation, collaboration. It was clear that we need to do something different to deliver some of these really demanding projects that's going to hit, in particular in Scotland, where Andrew Haynes says Scotland is well ahead of the decarbonisation programme. So Readypower, as I mentioned, we've got 2 companies. My job is to harness the strength of those 2 companies. We are adopting, and how we adopt is an integrated approach. So we use the strength of the companies to provide that sort of total integrated service to the customers. So it gives that continuity of service delivery. So what we want to do is take the problem away and run it with the client, whether that be, whether that's a Network Rail Direct, whether it's the tier 1s, the principal contractors. We want to work with them to take the problem away. And through this, I'll kind of show that some real great examples of how we are getting in early and working with the clients, and we're working with COLAS on some of the Euston, HS2 enabling works, SPL with the Midland Mainline electrification, AMI, the Buckingham Group, Crossrail, and King's Cross, where we're currently working with Morgan Sindall and Network Rail on quite a demanding, sort of challenging job in there. But again, it's all done with us being involved, rather than just receiving something and saying, go on with it. We're working very sort of hand in glove with the other players. Some of the benefits, we really, our ethos in the company is to work to ECI and collaboration, and I'm not going to go through all that, because again, coming back to what I opened up with was that, we've all heard all this before. It's how you apply it, and if you apply that, you will get these benefits. The contractors in right at the beginning contributing to the design process. We're working together as a team to introduce innovations, and sort of develop construction strategy, identifying good supply chain partners. I'm just picking a few out here. Certainly it's a fairly long list, but a really good list, you know, and again, by applying that and working to those principles, whether it's actually a contractually binding arrangement, you know, it doesn't need to be. You know, I've worked in many sort of individual contracts now, and it's been worked in a collaborative arrangement. It doesn't need to be part of your terms and conditions. You know, you can work collaboratively, even though everybody's on different sort of contract arrangements. And again, by building the relationships with the clients and adopting these principles is definitely where most value can be extracted. It reduces any cost for subsequent tendering, you know, because you work together, and you would like to think if you're working together, you're going to come up with a solution that A is buildable and B affordable. You know, it definitely reduces the amount of design change, you know, where a lot of the slippage, both from a program point of view and a cost point of view, is around about continual sort of changes as you a project, you know, and it really helps individuals to identify and mitigate and allocate, you know, risk appropriately and properly. You know, again, you know, we tend to do is and I think just this is one that we kind of looked at, piling foundations. And we discussed with the client, well, what is it you're getting? What you're going to get? You're going to get a team that's got, you know, now 15 years. TerraWise was a company in its own right that was bought out by the Readypower Group in 2018, 19. But it was populated and still is populated with some really good railway engineers. And I should say that, you know, the Readypower do not make no bones about it. We're not a civil engineering company that dabbles in railway. We're a railway civil engineering company. But the only other dabbling that we do is in support of power, where we do some foundations for some of the contractors that are working on National Grid. But invariably, we are a railway civil engineering company. So, you know, we sort of customise, if you like, what needs to happen with the clients. We've got the team, you know, we have the in-house engineering specialists. We've got full design and build foundation, which a lot of clients like and like to get us involved. You know, as I mentioned, we do a lot of line-side ancillary civils, and we now have this in-house PWA capability and a pretty good, you know, strong team. We can sort of take, and what we've tended to find, a lot of the clients are sort of wanting to engage you to do all of this and also manage the whole PWA interface, you know, whether that's the monitoring for the foundations going in, or even down to sort of heat speed applications and critical sort of rail temperature monitoring. So we're kind of tailoring that to sort of say, we've got a team that can do that. You know, obviously, as I mentioned, we've got the largest fleet of RRVs in the UK, you know, and the biggest piling rigs. And you know, the innovation, you know, and I'll touch on some of the innovation in the second part of the presentation with the introduction of the Superbug. You know, a Superbug was, you know, a track renewal machine that we brought in, but the spin-off is with the heavier machine, the more powerful machine, we can now operate the more heavier DTH rigs. You know, and it allows us to bore through rock. You know, and what we would do is sit with the client and go through that. You know, what's the benefits for doing that? You know, and we would work out, right, we'll put the team in, we'll help, and we'll be right in from day one. So that's kind of really that's a typical how we would look at working with principal contractors to be there right at the beginning and help influence the programme and achieve the programme sort of milestones. But look at some of the, you know, the projects that we are and have been involved. You know, with the Northwest Electrification Programme, which we got in. We were brought in sort of a wee bit late on this one, but then it kind of sort of get revamped, if you like, and looked at this with something like 1,700 well-lead foundations. You know, so you can sort of see that our ethos has always been get in and work. At that point in time, it was Carillion, you know, when Carillion were still around, Balfour Beatty and Murphy. So right through to some of the resignaling projects, you know, we've at the Wavertree, so around with sort of Buckingham's and Siemens, where we worked with them, and sort of we took all the substructure and the structure erection work, and worked really well. All of these sort of really, you know, put them up as good exercise in how collaboration should work. And similar with some of the P-way works that we're now involved in, because we've got the kit and we can help, and particularly the sort of the work delivery. We are no, you know, we are nowhere near a Balfour or a Colas or a Babcock in terms of back, but we do have a good sort of capability that can help and bring this whole programme together. You know, again, Southampton Freightliner is a great one, because that then meant that we worked with Colas, and the plant was brought in to work out plant requirements for the track, and equally we landed all the sort of foundation, all the steel and all the foundations, and it worked really, really well. And some of the good, you know, testimonials that were in there on that. And if I look at currently, you know, we still work that way. We're currently in at King's Cross on the eastern retaining wall. Now, we had been engaged and undertook and done the western retaining wall. Now, one of the challenges in the eastern retaining wall, you know, where a lot of people were kind of shying away from it, but we worked with Morgan Sindall and Network Rail to come up with a solution. The big issue in the interim over the years was their current in the Google head office, right adjacent, and you can see that right adjacent to where we're working. Colas, our Network Rail, and part of the major remodelling works in at King's Cross, needed to lower the track through there. So we worked out a way of putting a King Port's retaining wall in there, and very, very restrictive and reduced possession times. And I'm glad to say that, you know, we're still in there, but pretty much on programme, working well with the team in there. We've been embedded since day one, and you know, we expect to finish that over the coming sort of month or so. It's been pretty successful, and allowed a lot of the remodelling work to be undertaken in the major blockade recently in King's Cross. But one thing it's worth, and I put this in, and it was a survey that was undertaken by the PMI, the Project Management Institute. It's an American report, but it did sort of cover some 4,000 or 5,000 projects worldwide, including Europe. So although the values in dollars, it sends out the message. Now, this is a survey that was undertaken in 2018, so it's fairly sort of new, and it's probably the first time that I think that the industry has tried to put a value on project performance. And they've come up, and I've picked out, it's really a worthwhile report if you do get a chance to have a read at it. But there's a couple of things that I pulled out there. It kind of, to me, emphasise, you know, the whole bridging this gap, as it's in there, you know, bridging the gap between strategy, design, and delivery. The conclusions of this, you know, was quite staggering. 9.9%, 10% of every dollar is wasted due to poor project performance. If you put that in concept, 99 million is wasted on every billion invested. Now, if I look at the project portfolio that's still to be delivered from the remainder of CP6, there's still probably around about 1.5 billion worth of project enhancement to be delivered. Now, if you apply that, you know, which is a credible report, £150 million will be wasted, you know, on some of these projects. And a lot of that is you know, the essential importance, you know, project, you know, that they don't recognise an organisation strategy isn't fully realised because they don't realise the importance of project managing collaboration as a driver. and they don't recognise that their strategy of decarbonisation, whatever it is, can only be delivered through projects. But if you look at that quite staggering amount of money that's wasted, are we as an industry doing it right? And everybody will have their view on that. I personally don't. I think play collaboration, and it's something that we, the Readypower, are sort of really strong on trying to sort of instill that what we can bring to the client to help them deliver that. So for me, that all comes down to this the whole behaviours and how we act, as railway professionals. So one of the main things, and I touched on that we are, certainly a large part of our portfolio works is plant, and we have sort of made some major investments over certainly the last 3 or 4 years, which I'll hopefully take you through on this. This gives you kind of from Readypower was subject to a management buyout in 2017, with the support of primary capital. It was a private owned company that was bought out, in 2017. Since then, they've not kind of just rested on the laurels just to sort of say, right, okay, we've got it, we'll hire it out. Embarked on a fairly sort of radical sort of investment plan. As you can sort of see that both from a new kit, new plant sort of perspective, and people and accommodation, offices, and the likes to support that. So we kind of started going through, major, refurb all the machines. We looked. The first major investment was the Doosan cranes, for the structures and electrification, and then the long reach Doosans, and then new levers. So we started sort of upgrading the machines, and then the Superbug, which I'll touch on in a bit more detail. And that was quite a sizable investment. But if you then look at, obviously, we to support all of that, it's only ever going to work, and you can only ever sort of invest and bring new kit to the market if you've got good support systems. And for that, obviously, we opened up the new as well. We always had Reading and Winnerish, just outside Reading, and we upgraded that and sort of and moved a new facility there. And as well as Nottingham, quite substantial sort of location and depot in there. And in Glasgow, we've opened up sort of Banta, pretty good. And what we done in Glasgow was we were put every piece of machine that's in there is pretty much brand new, because we are sort of embarking on that sort of journey to replace these old sort of worn out sort of diesel engines. So a lot of investment, and we've moved a lot to bring that. As I mentioned, the Doosan long reach, and these are getting used, particularly well, sort of in a lot of sort of the electrification projects and some of the bigger projects down south, and right to one of the ones that we've got in Scotland, and we've got quite a few of them in here. Realising the need to get people to site, quick to maximise on short possessions. We now have a fleet of personnel carriers that can take up to 14, I think it is, that can take in there, and also can trail kit behind them. And they're getting used really well, particularly on a lot of the track renewals, where the access points tend to be not that close to the work. So we've now got a fleet and brought that into Scotland, and that's going pretty well. And again, we take everything sort of from innovation. So everything will start as you can see there, a sort of graphic, and then we work with manufacturers to make sure we get the desired sort of output at the end. Superbug sort of 300 project is one I'm going to kind of spend a wee bit of time on. This is our latest sort of our latest innovation that we brought to the market. But if I look on it, that we had, you know, it commenced in 2017. So you know, the company was sort of saying, what do we need to do different in CP6 to hit all these and manage, you know, the programs of you know, renewals point of view. We knew at that point in time that things were going to change. It would come back to the three alliances, which were going to be delivering sort of S&C plain line. You know, so we looked at it, and the scope was simple. It was design and build a disruptive machine for the track renewals market. You know, and that had to have leading performance. We had to do something different. You know, as a company, you always should be striving to do something different. What is a unique selling point? What can you bring? You know, if you're just bringing another, you know, machine, then great, it's new, and it'll tick all the boxes for the new sort of environmentally friendly machines. Absolutely great, but we needed to do something different. You know, so we looked at, a standard track wheeler, 13-ton excavator. Super Bug, we converted a 25-ton excavator, but we needed to do that, you know, around the restrictions that the currently around the railway from I think W6 that we worked to. I had to have superior lifting capability, you know, I had to have superior digging capability. We always wanted to couple it up, you know, that we wanted to come up with something that could lay sleepers, you know, and we've developed a new 14-sleeper hydraulic spacer. You know, we've now got 3 Super Bugs, you know, and sleeper layer, and fully operational at present. They're fully utilised, and they're now being booked sort of, you know, some months ahead by both the Southern Alliance and the Central Alliance. We've a further 3 machines that will be delivered by, you know, September 2021, which will give us 6. Yeah, and we do have scope. We always envisaged the first batch would be 10. You know, and the indications are that the demand is there, probably for us to go to 10. But by September, we'll have 6. It's a substantial investment for the company. You know, because you know, if you're working these in tandem, you know, you're talking it's £1 million a pair for the Super Bugs. But it is a sizable investment for the company. So if I look at, you know, some of the ability to lay the 14-sleeper hydraulic spacer was it is. Also was the Bluetooth tandem lift technology to enable the lifting of 60 panels. So we wanted to give the machines the capability, you know, working in Bluetooth, you know, to actually sort of stop a further down rating, if you like, and it would allow us to lift the 60 panels. They are heavier. The overall weight now, I think, is 35 tons, but they are compact and they can work. And you'll see as I go through the further slides that it is capable and can work in confined spaces. You know, so we've seen it in the strap line as another RV that would lead the market for the next decade. The problem was, you know, the challenges. Some of the challenges I've quickly go through with you. You know, we had no factory ready base machines that would fit W6 gauge for what we were trying to sort of do. You know, so we managed the undercarriage of the specialist narrow gauge with the top half of a zero tail swing. No, and again, the front end of the machine was too high for working under overhead line, so we had to do some major redesigns to make sure that we could work to that and work under overhead line. So we built the 14 sleepers. As far as I know, you know, I do know that there was a 24, 26 sleeper being done with the gear off cranes. But we're not aware of anybody that's built a 14 sleeper hydraulic spacer. You know, and again, that required a phenomenal amount of testing and detailed design efforts to get there. You know, and again, you know, as everything we kind of do within the company, you know, we had to make sure it was ultra reliable. You know, and from to give you that, you know, from the first conversations about how we were going to do this and whatever, you know, it took 3 years until we had the first machine ready to go. So, you know, it is a lot of money invested in research and development, you know, to get it where it is. we wanted, as we talked about in this, and this slide will sort of mention about, Bluetooth. We were testing it at that point in time, but it's now live, and we've undertaken our first jobs for Central Southern Alliance, and lifting out 60-foot panels. So that is now happening. The digging is a phenomenal digging machine. It's fitted with a 0.68 cube bucket, and it gives us the ability to sort of essentially excavate three times the speed of a standard machine. And similarly with the sleeper lane we built, the 14. Currently obviously it gets picked up in the 7 at the minute, but we designed the 40 back to the 7, so we don't need to sort of reconfigure the salmon wagons, or when the companies, we can still lift off the current wagons. Again, because Superbug is designed to undertake everything in the critical path. And the critical path we talk about for this machine is the digging, it's the bottom ballast, it's the lifting out the track, should I say, in the 60 foots, and the putting the sleepers in. So generally, on a track renewal, these are the ones that give you a lot of the problems and lost you. So it really, kind of what we're sort of saying is cut, essentially cut the Superbug. Get ready to standard track and use the Superbug. Generally, what we're finding just now that the clients are using, where they used to use a 3-in-1 configuration for the bulk and balance and excavation, they're now using 2 Superbugs and the Dota. So again, from that point of view, yes, it's more expensive for a higher rate, but certainly you're saving machines, you're saving additional on-off charges. But more importantly, and I'll come to it, is you're saving an incredible amount of time, which is going to drive the value and drive your efficiency that we need. Again, you need sort of less machine controllers. So that you're starting to sort of see some of the site benefits that you've got with this, and that's before you start looking at the holistic view of what else is it going to give you, from a more project strategic view. Again, one of the environmental benefits was always high on our agenda when we were sort of this together. We know RR, the task network rail, to reduce emissions by 20%, and that was a couple of years ago when we put this together. So as part of that drive, we went for, that we needed, very efficient machines, tier 4 AdBlue engines done, which reduces, the emissions, 86% less carbon, 86% less particulate matter than the old machines. So, really, I think, and some of the older machines, and some of the machines that are still there, and they work well, but they're not great for the environment. And again, in hand with what we're doing at Readypower, it's we're upgrading the fleet. And we've now got 40% of our fleet overall is at tier 4, and by the end of this year we want to get up to 50%. So we're making a massive sort of impact on sort of positive impact on environmental benefits. So again, just we work in conjunction with boss, who we do a lot of work with, and in turn work with Dukes in here. To work this, we've got an exclusive. We still have an exclusive arrangement, and as I said, at that point in time, we were looking to have a fleet of 10 by the end of 2021. We will have 6. COVID kind of sort of wee bit of sort of dent in our expectations. But again, the more we see it getting worked, we'll press the button again to get us up to that 10. So, and as I said, we intend to build more 14 sleeper hydraulic spacers. So we've got a few more coming online of those, which are working really well. Don't get me wrong, at the beginning it did take, you know, a bit of looking at how you do it and how you use it, but quickly, very quickly, both operators and the track mules guys got to grips with it. I should mention, you know, obviously you would only use, you know, the super bugs with the appropriate wagons, you know, so whether it's full, because it needs to be the bigger capacity wagons, you know, that can take, you know, these scoops of excavated material in the one hit. So again, it can work under overhead line, and it's now passed to work adjacent line open. But again, just that was a wee kind of sales pitch. It is getting pretty much booked solid, you know, for months ahead. Well, what we've got here is just recently, that's the blockade where we had Superbugs working in at King's Cross and the remodelling works. You know, the eagle-eyed amongst you might spot the retaining wall over to the right that we had to have in prior to this work sort of commencing to allow the track to be lowered through there. Now, there is a link in here to a video, but unfortunately, when I transferred over to this platform, with a bit of struggle getting that to run. It's only a couple of minutes and it shows the Superbug in action, but please, you know, you'll see it if you go into YouTube, you'll be able to just sort of type in Superbug, you know, Readypower Superbug, and have a look, and you can see it in action. But it's going pretty well. One of the things we looked at, you know, because you know it's easy to sort of say it's bigger and it's faster. You know, what we've done here is we looked at a conventional sort of Cat 11. I think it was 1,000-yard Cat 11 on a job that's been delivered, done, and successfully done. And we applied, you know, well, what ifs, you know, and what we've used is now live data, because this is a Scotland job we picked and just looked at. Now we've got live data because the machines are working. We know the rates, we know what they can do. So we applied that and put a revised bar chart. Now I'll not go through it because there's a bit thing, but what I've done is kind of in the next one, looked at the 4 activities, the critical activities that we, you know, can impact massively, you know, with Superbug. There's the burning out. Now, if we looked at that job, which lifting out 30-foot panels, by adopting the sort of tandem lift, you know, lifting out 60-foot panels, cuts down on the burns and whatever, all that sort of thing. You know, that can be done in 4 hours 30 as opposed to the 6 hours 40. So 2 hours 27 there. Same with excavation. It was a fairly long time in there for excavation, 11 hours. Superbug would do it in 7. Similar with the bottom ballast, you know, 4.5 hours better. Install sleepers, 2 hours 15. Let's start to see that, you know, and you know, mathematically it's pretty simple, and if it digs and stones up 3 times the capacity, it should go 3 times faster. But then when you sort of factor in the complex terrain moves, reset manoeuvres, difficult access points, which we looked at on that previous job, still come in 9 hours ahead of you know, the core activity being complete, track in, camped, and it was 9 hours ahead of actually how it was actually delivered, and it was brought back in on time. You're now sort of seeing the impact, not just from time on site, but what does that then give us as potential project benefits? So, in addition to the obvious operational, environmental, commercial, that I talked about previously, you know, if an holistic view of any project is taken, there's a number of positive variants. Some of them less time requirements for engineering trains on site, you know, saving at least 1 shift in the core renewals, less requirement of safety critical staff, machines, etc. The savings can be generated, you know, you can generate that as a cost saving or a production increase. Either way, it improves the unit rate for both, you know, SSC and plain line jobs. And undertake the additional welding stressing now within that 9 hours that you've clawed back. and also reducing the requirement for costly midweek follow-up on non-cost effective possessions. The reduction of possession requirements generates opportunities to significantly reduce Schedule 4 compensation point. So you can use that. You sort of say, I no longer need a 54-hour, I only need 40 hours or whatever, and the Schedule 4 payments to talks would be adjusted accordingly. You could say it that way. And again, a planned activity says 5 weeks, you might then reduce to 4. So again, you've saved a full sort of weekend. There is lots of ways, what I'm trying to say is lots of ways how you play, how you get the benefits out of using it. And again, high potential when you do any tracking for Schedule 8 compensation payments, which would be significantly reduced, because you probably will do the stressing on the core work. There's no requirement for heat-related DSRs to be imposed, and so there's no restriction on pathing and train headways. And the one I kind of touched on, on project enhancements, which is something that we're looking to sort of support in Scotland on the piling and foundations work. We now have the superbug that can be used the weekends on renewals. We could use the superbug in some of these really problematic small midweek possessions, that with the heavier capacity piling rigs. So lots of really sort of great potential project benefits, as well as I said, the initial cost savings at site level. Just to finish off, obviously a lot of everything we do is very much sort of done safely, undertaken safely. That's our mantra, just to try and make sure that we instill that within all the work at Readypower. And again, it's a simple innovation that we brought in, using the close call app, where it's all on the vans, it's on the vests, as you can sort of see from one of our guys there, and we can log sort of close calls. We've now, and that can be done, via the app. And also, as of last week, we introduced an open door 24/7 control, which will kind of monitor all that. So we believe it's just as important that we don't lose sight on the innovations that not just really drive production benefits, but the health and safety of our people. So I've kind of went through that, hopefully not at too fast a pace, but I thought there's a lot to get through. I hope you've enjoyed the session. And I'm going to hand you back to, so again, thanks for taking the time to listen, really appreciate it. And I'll hand you back to Craig, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andy. At this point, I'll just encourage and remind anyone with a question to drop it into the questions area on the dashboard. And whilst we give people a chance to do that, I was going to ask a few questions myself, Andy, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely, Greg, yeah.
So there's been some technology looked at in terms of on-track plan that creates an exclusion zone to prevent, staff on site wandering too close to a machine. I think one system was a lighting system that projected a beam of light. There's now things like geofences. Is that something Readypower have looked at, exclusion zones from the machines?
Yeah, we're actually sort of, funny you should say that. That was one of the things that we've been having a look at, again in discussion with Colas and Balfour in the south. Especially when you look at the King's Cross, and a lot of it come out of King's Cross. King's Cross is going well and has went well up to date. But you can sort of see the amount of machines and movement that are required in such a complex area. So some of the stuff we're doing just now is discussing with our clients, how do we best manage that? And some of the stuff you mentioned, we're currently looking at. So it's certainly on our radar to have a look at that and work with the clients to sort that one out, Greg.
Yeah, okay, great. I've got another one from me actually. So you mentioned for the superbug, the ticks in the box in terms of emissions and environment stuff. Has anyone looked into ways of reducing the noise emissions from the machines, or is that something that already has been done? Has that been taken down
Yeah, yeah.
couple of knock-ons.
With the new engines that were put in, the natural default is you do get some reduced noise, but like anything, there's always room for improvement on that. Sometimes with the very nature of these machines, it's difficult. But if you listen to some of the newer machines, and as I said, I mentioned in Scotland, predominantly the fleet is all new Libers. And a lot of those, if you compare that in comparison with some of the older machines that are working in the network, they are, really quieter than some of the older machines, Greg.
Yeah, okay, excellent, yeah. I've also noted down your quote, the 9.9% of every dollar wasted due to poor project performance. I think I'm going to use that this week. Throw that at a few people.
I think it is worthwhile using it, and I would encourage people to read that report. It was a really sort of in detailed report. I mean, I've only taken a couple of quotes out yet, but it really does give some good sort of graphical statistics. And we've all been involved in projects where we know, hand in heart, we know that we could have done it infinitely better. But it's quite a staggering, and if you applied that to the remainder of CP6, 150 million of no, you need to take it in context, but I think pretty much, they have somewhere got it right, that is probably upwards of that. Some projects will be delivered a lot less than that. There will be, but it is worth looking at and worth reminding everybody a lot of that can be sorted by collaborating. How many projects have been worked on that change just blights us? It takes so much time and claims, and and there is a clamber, and there's no doubt what I'm finding pretty much in Scotland, and listening to the likes of Alex Hines and whatever, they have a major challenge coming up. They have a real capacity challenge to deliver some of this work. And the quote that was quoted to me from Scottish Engineering, who are doing some work and looking at that, is to deliver the decarbonisation programme, you've essentially got to be delivering 4 times better than your best ever year. And the best ever year was when they delivered in Glasgow and Stirling, Allard and Blaine. Is the supply chain there to manage that? And more importantly, you can ill afford all these changes and sort of claims, going across the table. They just suck the life out of everybody, and they don't add value. And that's why there seems to be a clamber at the minute to go straight to the bottom. Right, you're the cheapest, we're going with you. I have never known a job that's went well by just merely going to the cheapest bid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree. I think Mr. Tom Wilson's got some questions. I'll let you unmute yourself, Tom. Just want to ask Andy.
Thanks, Greg. A couple of observations and a couple of questions in amongst all that stuff. So, observation 1 really was the quote you had, that executives don't recognise that strategy is delivered through projects. And that kind of resonated with me, because I think executives, these days everybody's in their bedroom, but locked up in an ivory tower or an office somewhere, never actually get out to see what's going on in the dark and wet of a Saturday night. And it's that delivering the strategy through the project by the people, the engineers that deliver it, is the bit that I think executives quite often miss in their let's compose our strategy from now until the next 3 years. So that was I like that quote. And an observation about the innovation thing, I've always thought recently that, and I know Andrew Hines is maybe going to change things, that Network Rail, yes, they publicly welcome innovation, but privately they don't really like new things, or at least when somebody new comes on the market, there's a line of naysayers that will tell you why your innovation won't work, rather than work with you to make it work. And a question maybe attached on it that was, did you find any of that negativity in the development of the Superbug?
A bit at first, and it's really only in the last 3-4 months that people started seeing it. Once they started using it, Tom, there was always a bit of this, Well, no, and the railway can be a bit fickle at times, and a lot of it for the right reasons. If you've got a good supply chain in there and they're delivering, people are loath to change that, you know, and they go into this wee insular sort of, well, not from our project and don't see. So there was a bit of that, but it was quickly quelled. You know, the proof in the pudding is always when you can deliver. If the machine delivers, people then start seeing the benefit of it. So we've quickly got over that. But yes, there was an awful lot of, you know, nervous moments. You know, when as I said, we've now invested at 6 machines and at an investment of £3 million for us. You know, so really, there was some nervousness, but I've got to say, you know, it's now sort of proven sort of worthwhile. But yeah, there's always people will push back, and you're 100% right about the executives, you know, and I think we all know, you know, that unfortunately, engineers, my view, right, totally my view, have dropped down at a kind of level, and accountants and procurement people seem to know what they're doing, and lots of things are let by ill-informed. And I'm not decrying the procurement or certainly the accountant sort of fraternity, but the balance needs to be readdressed. I would suggest, Tom.
I think it does, and you know, I'm maybe coming from a viewpoint where, you know, having spent a lifetime in the railway, there just seems to be every other person I meet now is a devil's advocate, and I think, does the devil really need that many advocates? You know, because it's like, I'll tell you 1,000 reasons why your innovative idea won't fly, rather than let me work with you to facilitate it and make it happen. And I'm just really impressed you've got the superbug up and running and on the ground. Another question then, if I have, is was maybe about your hydraulic sleeper spacing beam.
Yeah.
You know, as we know, as we move to the carbon embodied carbon reduction of the visage of the future, if we go back to using steel sleepers again in any quantity, will there be any requirements to amend or make changes to that sleeper beam?
Yes, there would be. There would be. We would need to sort of relook at that, but it's not. I wouldn't see it as a major challenge, Tom. You know, obviously what you're dealing with is a much lighter load, and it's just how it's done. And in a previous life, interestingly, when we did the 28 sleeper beam with the gear off, you know, we did look at how we would do steel sleepers with that, and it can be done, but we would need to sort of kind of look at some sort of amendment on that, but not a showstopper at all.
Good. It's good that you've got that open mind that, you know, you may have spent a pile of money and a lot of time investing in the development of something that might then be need a further amendment to suit the next big thing or the next approach to track renewals that might happen. And a final question from me. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
No, and you go, Tom. Sorry.
A final question for me was on your close call app. I think most people or most companies have close call apps or some phone-based system where you come across that close call. You've got it in your pocket, you pull out the phone and you're recording that close call. But certainly when I've used that close call, and I've had to use that close call procedure, it was a bit long-winded. Great in getting through. So striking while the iron was hot was fantastic, but then it was a bit of a palaver to go through the endless questions to record it. You know, I just wondered have you ever used the close call app yourself? Is it something that is user friendly, a bit more than just?
It is very user friendly, and we have got, you know, really good engagement, and some of the engagement goes back to just how you know, people. One of the things we do on a monthly basis is we look at, you know, what we see deem as the kind of what a better expression, the best close call. You know, and that doesn't need to be that you've saved it. It's something that we look at as a kind of panel and sort of say, no, that was really good. And the guy done really well. The lady there done really well in identifying that. And then we kind of, you know, we make a big play of it, and we give them a hamper and all that sort of thing, and it's put in the internal sort of magazines and whatever. So the uptake is pretty good, and because it is user friendly, you're essentially you're not putting people off that you've put something that's too clunky that they won't want to use. So we found that the engagement really good.
It sounds like another success story, and I'm pleased for you. That's all my questions, Craig. That's me done.
Thanks, Tom. I think what I'll do is just I'll attempt to unmute everyone, and maybe that will make it easier for anyone to feel free to ask a question. I'm just going to have to run down the list here. Bear with me. Okay. I've hit unmute all, so hopefully, you know, if you're muted yourself, you can just unmute yourself, and I feel free to ask a question or make any comment.
Andy, it's Jim Watson. Hopefully a very, very easy one to answer.
Hi, Jim.
The super bug with the 1.8 cubic metre bucket, in your conventional track renewal situation, not talking about rolling trains or anything fancy like that, hourly tonnage per machine, what's your new norm?
It's a good question. I'll need to get back to you on the tonnage. I should have had a look at that on, but I'll get back to you on what the tonnage. I do have it. I just don't have it to hand, Jim, but I can certainly fire that over you to what tonnage that we're coming out with on just a box straightforward. We've got a train beside it and digging. I'll certainly be able to get that to you.
Absolutely brilliant, Andy. I'm sitting at the moment a grip 3 job, not say where it is, grip 3 job, a lot of excavation, and I'm looking at how we can be really efficient with it. And that bit of information would be really, really helpful. Thank you, Andy.
No bother, I'll get that. And what I'll do is I'll take it from some of the jobs on the weekend or this weekend coming type of thing. So you've got really sort of up-to-date information on that one, Jim.
Right, that's absolutely smashing. It just makes what I'm doing, it gives that little bit more surety and evidence behind it. I was sorry to hog the floor if nobody else is coming forward. Obviously, I was interested to hear about your involvement in the Southampton Freightliner terminal. It's just perhaps typical of the way the railway works. I was involved in exactly the same job, and we were looking at Grip 5 rolling into Grip 6 under CP4. So the job is actually delivered under CP6. What does that say about our industry?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I had the same thought. Southampton, we looked at in a previous life, probably 5-6 years ago, and it was going right. We need to get it going. We need to get it going. But yeah, it's symptomatic of what the industry can be like. You know, it eventually gets there, but it kind of needs to up the game a wee bit to get there a bit quicker.
Yeah, I think we do. And as an industry, it's all about delivering efficiently and providing the cost savings that the end client, whether it be Transport Scotland or the UK government, is looking for.
Right, I know this is time, but I'm alloy the question to the general body of the.
One more question from the audience, if you would mind.
Okay.
From Andrew Anderson. Andrew Anderson's asking, do you see the potential for more rail being reused if you can cut it into 60 foots rather than 30 foots?
Well, it used to, you know, and until we kind of, I'm not sure if it's the fear factor sort of crept in over the years. that sort of made people kind of wary of reusing rail because of potential inherent sort of flaws or issues with it. But you would like to think, you know, if you then sort of, you know, have this predominantly 60-foot rail, you know, and some of it, you know, could easily be cascaded to other routes, you know, and you tie it in with some of the clever sort of flashback sort of technology. Why wouldn't you? Why couldn't you? So to me, the answer is yes. You know, to Andrew's question, yes, it's got to be worthwhile looking at.
And that's maybe another selling point when we come round to thinking about sustainability. That's another thing that you can offer is,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, have another think about sustainability instead of sending all this back into the melting pot. And don't get me wrong, British Steel are crying out for, you know, recycled steel.
Yeah.
But it'd be good to think it could be repurposed rather than recycled.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew. And that shows that we were able to unmute ourselves.
Yeah. It was just one from me that I kind of made a statement, and I tend to agree with it, and I've said it often, you know. But Andrew, it was interesting to see Andrew Haynes. It made the question of over specifying and over engineering. Is that something that, you know, people think that's not the case, or indeed I think it is? And if I look at, you know, some of the foundations and piling that we're putting in, you know, we're still running with 610 CHS piles, you know, probably because that's what was designed in the 60s for the original sort of electrification program, but nobody's looked at. You know, so even things like that, I feel, and it'd be interesting to know from the body, is that something
from a designer's point of view, if you're a designer and you're interested in getting your design sign-off, it's a far safer route and a far cheaper route because you've less rework if you design something that is fully compliant with the standard, rather than question and say, well, I see what the standard says, but I could design something that maybe doesn't quite meet the standard. The minute you put that in the design, it'll normally attract a comment, you've got a DRN issue, you're then into, actually, it's far simpler if I just comply with the standard, do what it says, rather than step out of a comfort zone and start to challenge the standards through my design. Yes, there is a standards challenge process, and I've raised a few over the last year or so. Some of them have been successful, some of them have fallen on by the wayside. So I've raised a challenge about the length of the ballast ramp, or even the creation of a ballast ramp, because in my view, it just makes a mess on the site.
Yeah.
You know, turning machines round about, spinning a track, all that stuff to backblade something that some geotechnical engineer thinks is a transition. Well, it's not. Anyway, but that aside, I think that, you know, there is a place for challenging standards, but design isn't really the bit to do it. So we end up with things designed to the recipe book, rather than say, well, actually, I could use a wee bit less flour and a wee bit more, you know, that kind of thing. We don't tend to change it. We are recipe book driven as designers. Whereas in other places, in other countries, we're asked to justify or produce calculations for the sleeper type, the sleeper depth, the sleeper spacing, the rail section. For when we're designing for Network Rail, the main client in the UK, it's off the shelf. What's the track category is the question, and then we specify components to match that. Now that might be in the one size fits all track category, entirely over specified. So instead of specifying steel sleepers for higher category tracks, we tend to play safe and just specify concrete ones.
Yeah,
and that's just, you know, it's less argument, less fuss. You know, I'm only interested in the design going out the door. As soon as it's handed over to the construction team, I don't ever see it again. I never see the installation. There's no construction phase services for designers these days. My guys never get on site, so they don't actually see the things that are specified. So they specify out the recipe book, and that's an end of the matter.
Yeah.
That's a designer's viewpoint. I don't know if there's any construction folks on the call might want to add flavour to that.
I think, Tom, Jim Watson here, you're absolutely right. We're going down a bit of a slippery slope, that there is a huge gap between design and construction. In the old days, it was the case that you, as a designer, would probably also supervise the construction. That's no longer the case. Designer, your involvement finishes at grip 5, and somebody totally different goes and delivers in grip 6. So you're not getting, if you like, that exchange of knowledge. And it's not just the railway industry that applies to. I think generally in civil engineering it applies, particularly in the railway industry, but say more generally, you're no longer getting that transfer of knowledge, which is to the disbenefit of the industry.
I think it is, Jim, and I think what we've got is the silos that we try to avoid. We've got the surveyors who never see any more than the survey. And the surveyors these days struggle to identify sleeper type, never mind fastening type. You know, it's concrete sleeper wherever you go, you know, and that kind of thing. And then we've got, you know, the designers who never see it get built, with the construction team who don't really get involved in the design very much. And then it gets handed over to the poor maintainers to make it work.
Yeah.
Who gets no say in any of the proceeding normally.
Absolutely, Thomas. So back to your original point, though, of putting in a design that will satisfy the client's project engineer, the person who's reviewing the design and preparing the DRN. How much of that is perhaps preferential engineering? I have my views, which probably align with yours. That there is an issue out there, and I have to say I almost cry when I see pictures on LinkedIn, etc. Here's the job we did up in the Scottish Highlands, somewhere north of Inverness. We're putting in G44s. You're going, why? Why on earth are we doing that? Oh, we don't like steel sleepers. Preferential engineering. And what is that costing the industry?
And now, and the legacy terms of, you know, in 60 years' time, when those concrete sleepers are life expired, that's a lot of landfill we're talking about.
And indeed it is, yes.
I was just going to pitch in on some of those topics there. So I would have to say that's definitely one of the benefits of working in an alliance, is, you know, you are working side by side, designers with the construction teams, and you know, it does help designers get a feel for construction and vice versa as well, you know, and there is that knowledge share. There's obviously still a long way to go in these things, because we have worked in silos probably for so many years, but you can definitely see the difference and the benefits of working in an alliance partnership from that point of view.
I think the alliance promotes collaboration, but in the, you know, in the, if you're not in an alliance, and my company's not in an alliance, and lots of the design services consultants aren't, the designers aren't in alliances, it's very difficult for me to take my graduates, introduce them to the railway. Yes, I can show them how to do track geometry design, but there's nothing like actually going out and seeing it installed, and actually going out in the track and seeing how difficult it might be to install their design, and then take that lesson forward to try and design something that's a bit less complex. But that's an industry problem. It won't be solved by a discussion here, but it's interesting to discuss. I don't have any further questions written for you, Andy.
Okay.
Yeah. Any last call for any final questions from anyone?
Tony?
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought Tony McKenna unmuted to ask a question.
I did unmute, but it was just going back to Andy's point where he was asking that question about the design. Sometimes you've got to wonder if the SIGI, was right, and that they spent enough money in SIGI. You just carry the risk into the design and then the construction. Had a bit of experience of that.
It's sometimes difficult to get your SI and your GI information ready and available for the design. And I know on the East Kilbride project, that's been one of the things that has been a bit tail wagging the dog. Getting the SI and GI late in the day has caused us a bit of a problem. We're almost like going back to revisit the track design to have a look and see what the site investigation what's actually said, what the GEO, what is the window sampling. It's all
that's not just unique to the track renewals element as well. I mean, some of the major problems we have, and picked up in Tony's point, is some of the foundations and tiling work that we've been kind of asked to do almost without sort of proper SI, GI, and all that happens is, again, you've got sort of some clients that think you can go out and just auger holes right along the track and come back and sort of the concrete and all that sort of stuff. In reality, when you do that, because you've got not the greatest of SI, GI or none at all, the holes just fall back in on themselves, and you're going, well, you'd have engaged with us. If you want to do that, to de-risk it, then you need to put in potentially some sacrificial casings or whatever. But you're right, and Tony, you're absolutely right. It's not just track that's blighted by poor SI and GI.
And the response is to over-design or over-engineer because of the unknown. Yeah.
I think again, we're coming back to the client and lowest headline cost, etc., etc. Again, having been involved in electrification projects, there is a reluctance to spend money on GI, and that's an absolute killer. You need to know what you're going in to either pile in or excavate in and cast in situ foundations. You need to know, you need to have a sound basis to make that design decision.
Any further questions for Andy at all? Okay. If there's not, I'll just pass over to yourself, Tom, if you could give the vote of thanks, please.
Thanks, Ray. No problem. Thanks, Andy, for a great and interesting presentation. Your focus tonight was kind of threefold: technology, your improvements in your fleet capacity and your newer machines, the innovation, your concept project, all the way from concept to completion, the superbugs, and you touched at the end on your eco behaviours and the emission reductions by 86% of some of these newer engines. Readypower is seen by the majority as a kind of south-based company, but actually aligned with Network Rail, and you've been based in Blantyre since 2018, so you have a presence up here. You've got the biggest and most modern fleet in the UK, very wide-ranging rail service opening, and that's the key word, rail service. You're a railway civil engineering company, not a civil engineering company with a railway arm. You integrate with the customer and Network Rail as an ECI contractor, and you drive the cost down by avoiding design change, identifying risks, and allowing early mitigation of those risks that are identified. You hit on the fact that collaboration is key to success. I mentioned collaboration a minute ago. It's a word we use a lot. Actually, when you're in that collaborative setting, I think quite often we don't realise we are collaborating. We're just getting on well, and everything seems to be flowing well. You mentioned your example of collaboration at King's Cross as a good example of that. You highlighted you focused on your superbug project, that innovation it required a big investment, and the nervousness, I'm sure there was some nervousness in the company, because in that 3-year development time from concept to introduction and acceptance, it must have been, you know, we're watching the setting fire to this pile of dollars over here, and we really haven't got a return on that. But now, hopefully, you'll be getting that kind of return, because that machine is a great example of the development of a bigger, faster, bespoke, you know, it's task driven. It's a machine that will deliver real savings in time and cost on a renewal site. You've thought about the process, what's taking time on site, and in each of those areas, you've shown where the time savings can be gained, and they're really impressive. Less machines, less machine controllers, less on-off costs, all of that rolled into that package. It's like, what's not to like about the Superbug? So I'd like to thank you, Andy, for a great presentation, and I'm sure the members will join me if we can, unmute ourselves and show our appreciation in the usual manner. Thanks again.
Thank you, John.
It's always difficult to do applause when you're online, but we sometimes manage it. I'll stop the recording now, Greg. Okay, thank you.
But